So if something in this video felt familiar, hello, I am Jessica. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt truly understood? Not respected for what you've done, not appreciated for what you provided, but understood as a man. Most men over 60 will pause at that question, not because the answer is complicated, but because it's been a long time. You've lived a full life, you've worked, you've built, you've carried responsibilities most people never saw. You showed up when it mattered, even when you were tired, even when no one said thank you, even when it cost you something. And somewhere along the way, you learned something dangerous. You learned how to stay quiet, not weak, not passive, just quiet. Because explaining how you feel started to feel unnecessary, or worse, misunderstood. So you stopped. And now, here you are, still strong, still capable, still thinking, more than you say, but feeling something you don't always admit out loud. Distance, not from people, from yourself. Let's talk about that. You don't need to chase anymore. There was a time when chasing made sense. You were building something, a career, a life, a relationship. You had something to prove, and chasing felt like movement, like progress. But now, you don't need to prove anything. You already did, and yet, some men still chase. Attention, validation, being wanted. Not because they're weak, but because they forgot something. At this stage of life, your value doesn't come from pursuit. It comes from presence. A man who is calm, grounded, and sure of himself doesn't need to run after anyone. And the moment you stop chasing, something interesting happens. You start seeing clearly who respects you, who uses you, who actually values your presence. Chasing blinds you. Stillness reveals. Silence is not your enemy, but don't hide inside it. You've mastered silence. You know how to sit with your thoughts, how to observe without reacting, how to walk away instead of arguing. That's strength. But there's a line most men cross without realizing it. Silence can protect you, or it can isolate you. And many men your age live inside that isolation, not because they want to, but because it feels easier than explaining, easier than being misunderstood again. But here's the truth. If no one hears you, no one can meet you. You don't need to say everything. You don't need to become someone else. But the right words, at the right moment, can change everything. Even something as simple as, that didn't sit right with me. That's not weakness. That's clarity. And clarity commands respect. You are not too much. You were just with the wrong people. A lot of men carry this quiet belief. I'm difficult. I'm hard to understand. I expect too much. But that's not always true. Sometimes, you were just giving your depth to people who only understood surface. You were offering consistency to people who only valued excitement. You were offering loyalty to people who didn't recognize it. And after enough of those experiences, a man doesn't become emotional. He becomes reserved, measured, careful with what he gives. That's not damage. That's wisdom. But don't confuse wisdom with closing yourself completely. Because the right person doesn't see your depth as a burden. They see it as stability. Choose peace, but don't settle for emptiness. At this stage of life, peace matters more than anything. You don't want drama. You don't want chaos. You don't want to explain yourself every day. You want ease, respect, quiet connection. But here's where many men go wrong. They confuse peace with absence. No arguments, no tension, no expectations, but also no real connection, no depth, no emotional presence. That's not peace. That's emptiness. Real peace still has warmth in it. It still has conversation. It still has moments that matter. Don't settle for silence that feels comfortable. If it's slowly disconnecting you from life, you still matter more than you think. This is the part most men won't say out loud. There are moments when you wonder if your role has quietly faded, children grown, responsibilities lighter, fewer people depending on you, and you start asking yourself, where do I fit now? Let me answer that clearly. You don't lose value because your responsibilities change. Your value evolves. You're not here to prove anymore. For most of your life, you were moving forward without stopping. There was always something to handle, something to fix, someone depending on you. You didn't have time to sit with your thoughts. You just kept going. But now, things are quieter. And in that quiet, you're starting to notice things you never paid attention to before. What drains you? What fulfills you? What feels real? and what never did. That shift? It's not confusion, it's clarity finally catching up with you. You're becoming more selective, and that's a good thing. There was a time when you tolerated more than you should have. People who didn't respect you, situations that didn't feel right, conversations that went nowhere. You stayed because that's what you were taught to do. Endure, provide, keep things together. But now, your tolerance is lower, not because you're impatient, but because you finally understand the cost of your energy and you don't want to waste it anymore. You don't want noise, you want meaning, you don't want attention, you want respect, and most importantly, you don't want to explain your worth anymore. You want it to be recognized without effort. That's not ego, that's self-respect. You're not lonely, you're just done with shallow connections. This is something many men misunderstand about themselves. They think, I feel alone. But when you really look at it, it's not loneliness. It's disconnection from anything real. Because you can sit in a room full of people and still feel nothing. No depth, no understanding, no real conversation. That's not loneliness. That's emptiness in disguise. And your mind has started rejecting that. You no longer have the patience for surface-level interactions. You want something deeper, something calm, but real. Something where you don't have to perform, where you can just be. And that's rare, but it exists. And it starts with you refusing to settle for less. You're thinking more about time, and that changes everything. There's a moment every man reaches where time stops feeling unlimited, not in a fearful way, in a real way. You start asking different questions. Is this worth my time? Do I actually enjoy this? Why am I still doing things that don't matter to me? And those questions, they shift your entire perspective. Things that once felt important lose their weight. Impressing people, proving ourselves, chasing validation. It all starts to feel unnecessary because time becomes more valuable than approval. And once you understand that, you stop living for reactions and start living with intention. You're allowed to change even now. This is something many men struggle with. They feel like their identity is already set. This is who I am. This is how I've always been. But that's not true. You're not finished. You're just more aware. And awareness gives you something powerful. Choice. You can still change how you live, who you spend time with, what you tolerate, what you prioritize. You're not stuck. You're just finally awake enough to choose differently. And that's not something to fear. That's something to use. You don't need more people. You need the right ones. At this stage, it's not about having a big circle. It's about having a real one. People who respect your silence, not question it. People who understand your presence without needing constant words. People who don't drain you just by being around. And the truth is, most people won't fit into that anymore. And that's okay. Because your life is not about collecting people. It's about protecting your peace. And the right people, they don't disturb that peace. They add to it. So if you've been feeling different lately, quieter, more distant, more thoughtful than before, don't rush to fix it. Don't assume something is wrong with you. Because maybe, for the first time in your life, you're not distracted. You're not chasing. You're not proving. You're just seeing things clearly. And clarity can feel uncomfortable before it starts to feel like freedom. So take your time, sit with it, understand it. Because this version of you, the one that sees deeper, chooses carefully, and values peace, is not someone you should run from. It's someone you've been becoming your whole life. And now that you're here, you don't need to go back. Just move forward with intention, with awareness, and most importantly, with respect for the man you've become. So if something in this video felt familiar, if it felt like it was speaking directly to you, then don't ignore that. Because most men spend years, even decades, pushing those feelings aside. Not because they don't matter, but because no one ever gave them the space to matter. But now, you've heard it. And maybe for the first time in a long time, you feel understood. And that matters more than you think. Because a man who understands himself stops chasing what drains him, stops tolerating what disrespects him, and starts choosing a life that actually feels right. Not louder, not more impressive, just real. So take a moment after this video ends, not to scroll, not to distract yourself. Just sit for a minute and ask yourself one simple question. Am I living in a way that truly respects the man I've become? And whatever your answer is, that's your starting point. If this video spoke to you, even a little, take a second to like it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and share it with someone who might need to hear this too, because sometimes the right words at the right time can change more than we realize. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next one. If it felt like it was speaking directly to you, then don't ignore that, because most men spend years, even decades, pushing those feelings aside, not because they don't matter, but because no one ever gave them the space to matter. But now, you've heard it, and maybe for the first time in a long time, you feel understood, and that matters more than you think, because a man who understands himself stops chasing what drains him, stops tolerating what disrespects him, and starts choosing a life that actually feels right. Not louder, not more impressive, just real. So take a moment after this video ends, not to scroll, not to distract yourself, just sit for a minute and ask yourself one simple question. Am I living in a way that truly respects the man I've become? And whatever your answer is, that's your starting point. If this video spoke to you, even a little, take a second to like it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and share it with someone who might need to hear this too, because sometimes the right words at the right time can change more than we realize. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next one.